Hello and welcome to Robertson Street in Glasgow. To each and every one of you who have come along here, giving your time, we thank you from the bottom of our hearts. You really are wonderful people who care far deeply about the children of Scotland and the people in these offices behind me. Because the people at Education Scotland are playing party to the Scottish Government's health and well-being surveys, or under the guise of health and well-being, when they're nothing short of sordid, sick and paedophilic questionnaires and sex education being distributed to classrooms all around this country. They are breaking the law, and 12 of 32 Scottish councils have completely rejected these vile surveys that were distributed. It's nowhere near enough. We want each and every council and each and every person that works for the council and each and every person that works in this building behind me to take a hard, long look at themselves. Because I'll be honest with you, I'm not going to beat about the bush. I'm only a taxi driver. They're despicable. Absolutely despicable. Because what is happening in this country is breaking the hearts, minds and souls of people like you, decent, ordinary, working class people that care deeply about the children of Scotland. We've got a number of speakers here tonight. I am not going to be up here for a great deal of time. We've got doctors, we've got school teachers and a head teacher, a retired head teacher, who took me out today and was nearly going to get me drunk again. But Katrina's beautiful, and she deserves immense credit, because it's difficult for people in her profession to stand up and battle against what the Scottish Government are attempting to do. In fact, they're not attempting to do it. Very sadly, they're doing it. And it's up to all of you to continue in the battle against this government, who really are despicable. It's sex scandal after sex scandal after sex scandal, and they are warping the minds of children. To be teaching children of 14 years of age, and I said this before up outside Stuart Street Police Station, if I took any women here tonight onto Buchanan Street, even that beautiful police officer there, in civvy clothes, up to Buchanan Street, and we asked children of 14 and 15 years of age the questions directly from the Health and Wellbeing Survey. I hate calling them that, because they're anything but health and well-being. They're absolutely sick. But if we did get up there and ask children that beautiful young cop would be swept off her feet, she would be arrested with me, and would be charged with child sex grooming. It's deplorable, but so many people out there are blind to it. Why are they blind to it? They're blind to it because it's not went to television. Why is it not went to television? Because the Scottish Government have stopped it. They don't want to educate the people of Scotland. They want us all to be dumb, not to know that what they're doing, sliding in, and excuse the pun and pardon the pun, it's unintended, sliding in a filthy sex education for children is nothing short of disgusting. I'm heartbroken at this, and I've not got any grandchildren. I've got 2 children in their 20s. I really don't know how the people feel here tonight that have got children at primary school and secondary school. It must be rather frightening, but I've spoken to some of you, and you've told me you've withdrawn your child from school, which in itself is heartbreaking. But I'll be very honest with you. If my children were still at school, I would withdraw my child from school, because this guise of health and well-being is all about the sex. Sexualising our children, exploiting our children. It's sexploitation of children in Scotland. And I hope you guys hear me up there, because eventually the police won't stand out there and down there. They'll actually want to arrest me, because I'm heartbroken at this, and I'm not going to lie, don't you? And I hope all you folk here are the exact same as me. I'm going to now pass you on to Richard Lucas, who's the leader of the Scottish Family Party. And Richard is also a former teacher, and he has got more knowledge about exactly the levels of education in primary schools and in secondary schools, and is a professional speaker, unlike myself. But I'm going to speak to you at the end again, but right now, here now, I'm going to thank once again each and every one of you for coming along here today. It really is fantastic to have your support. Thank you.
Right, thanks, Steph. Steph is a hero of this movement because he's used his public profile to tackle this really important issue. Instead, he could have opted for the easy life. He could have just kept on, just doing the popular things, doing the things the government, the council liked. There's a problem with the... Just get a bit closer. Sorry, just doing the things that the government likes, the council likes, the media like. Steph could have gone for that, for the public profile, for the adulation, but instead of that, he's decided to address what really counts. And that's involved some sacrifices, but that's why we're all here, aren't we? Because protecting children comes at the top of the priorities. That's not something that gets lost further down. That is a top priority. Now, we're here at a very appropriate time, because a couple of years ago, I started looking into the government's new sex education resources. I was horrified by them. I made videos about them. I wrote a book about them. Lots of people know about them. But it's taken a while for them to come on stream. I think during the lockdown, schools didn't quite get round to it, but now they are. And we're hearing lots of parents saying, wow, what is going on now with our children? So this is the right time. They always seem to do sex education at the end of the year, when they hope parents are not really noticing. Then you can do it all, then have the holiday and everyone can forget about it. That seems to be the strategy. So we're here at the right time. Now, I'm going to introduce all the other speakers. I'm going to say a little bit more later on. But just before that, I'm going to tell you just a little bit about my experience with our friends here at Education Scotland. When I was a teacher, they tried pretty hard to get me fired from my school. Every time they came in to inspect the school, the headmaster would call me in afterwards and they'd say, this is what Education Scotland has said about you. They're concerned about you. They're concerned about your views. That they're asking why we allow you to say the things you do. And I was outraged by it, absolutely outraged. So I complained to them. I said, what's going on here? If you want to complain about me, you tell me. Don't keep trying to get me fired with my employer. And they came back to me and said, we never said those things to the headmaster. So I went to the headmaster and said, is that true? They say they never said them. The headmaster said, well, they did. They absolutely did. So I went back to Education Scotland and said, it seems like your inspectors are lying. They've realised they shouldn't have said them, they're now lying. You need to come in, meet with the headmaster, listen to this from the horse's mouth, so to speak, and find out the truth. So they came in and had a meeting with the headmaster. They wrote to me after and said, we have decided together that these things never happened. These things were never said. It's like North Korea. So I went to the headmaster and said, oh, what's going on here? Did you agree to this? He said, I never agreed to any such thing. I never said that to them. So I made it into a formal complaint. They investigated for, I don't know, a year or something, then said, oh, it's one person's word against another, so we can't do anything. So as far as I'm concerned, amid all the other problems with this organisation, they just can't tell the truth. They will lie to cover their tracks. But lying to me, who cares about that compared to the corruption of a generation of children in school? That's the real big issue here. So, I'm just going to say one more thing before I hand over to the other speakers. Now, just bear in mind, while Education Scotland was trying its very hardest to get me fired from my job, who are they promoting? Who are they putting in the position of authority in charge of sex education resources in Scotland? Dr. Colin Morrison. Dr. Let's break down the barrier between childhood and sexuality, Morrison. While they were trying to get me fired, he was right to the top. And he still is there in that position, in charge of sex education resources in Scotland. He still sits on the Scottish Education Council. That's the government's panel of experts to guide education. He wants to break down the barrier between childhood and sexuality. I wrote to the government a few months ago. I said, "What? Surely you don't want this person holding these views in this position." And they replied saying, "He was appointed by a committee and we value all sorts of perspectives." So they basically completely ignored it. So as far as they're concerned, having a child sexuality advocate at the heart of government, at the heart of sex education, that's just fine. That's just fine by them. Is it fine with us? No! It certainly isn't. It certainly isn't. And you being here tonight is going to help deliver that message to them that it's not fine. It's not fine. Right, but that's enough for me tonight. We have got a fantastic lineup of speakers. They're all going to speak quite briefly. Now, they're coming from various different perspectives. Some of you might think, "Oh yeah, I get that perspective." Others you might think, "Well, that's not so much my thing." But overall, we're sharing the same concern. So everyone's going to speak from their own point of view, from their own perspective. We haven't written them a script, so it's over to them. And our first speaker is Mandy, who I haven't actually met yet, but she is here, I understand.
Is Mandy here? Mandy McGurk?
Not yet. It appears. We'll fit her in later if you had a chance. Now we're going to hand over to a well-known social media personality, and that is Niall Fraser. Now Niall's got a fiery red hair, and he's also got fire in his belly. That's for sure. He's a very passionate speaker, and we're delighted to have him here. So over to Niall.
Hello everyone, can you hear me, yes? So, we're all here, and can I just say, the politicians, honestly, why does it take a cabbie to bring this to the public? It's outrageous, guys. Right, so, welcome to Pride Month, everyone. The month where corporations adopt and overuse rainbows in order to ruthlessly and mercilessly merchandise gays, lesbians and bi people. To sell more products, of course, unless, of course, they operate in a country that doesn't allow homosexuality, in which case the rainbows conspicuously vanish. So what happens to a country on a strict diet of rainbows? Well, we already know. In Scotland, it's led to surveys in schools that ask pupils about their anal sex escapades or lack thereof. Perhaps more worryingly, we've suddenly got a huge problem with transgenderism, which such is the scale of the problem that we now have multi-year waiting lists for a gender clinic in Glasgow called the Sandyford Clinic. This clinic simply would not exist without the power of rainbow indoctrination, guys. It would not exist. Families up and down this country are being torn apart. Parents having to reconcile the thought of calling their son daughter or their daughter son. Can you imagine this, guys? Put yourself in the situation. Empathise with these parents. And you know what? I thank God that the waiting list for the Sandyford is years long. Years. Because it gives us a chance to stop this, guys. It gives us a chance to stop the butchery of the children. It gives us a chance to stop vulnerable children and young adults being sacrificed on a rainbow altar. It's a national disgrace, guys. This is a national disgrace. The only thing that should be visiting the Sandyford is a wrecking ball. And I'll finish with a story, because I don't think the SNP know the levels of anger that they're brewing up here in Scotland. I was in the pub over the weekend and I was discussing this very protest, and I brought up the sex surveys, and a guy at the pool table piped up and says, "If somebody asked my wee daughter if she takes up the chocolate box, I would take his face off." Everyone laughed, and yet everyone nodded in agreement. This is dangerous, guys, very dangerous. It's dangerous for parents, it's dangerous for teachers, and it's dangerous for the kids, most importantly. Thank you very much, everyone.
Right, thank you, Niall. You always hits the mark. and hits the mark hard. Right, our next speaker is a former head teacher. So, Katrina, could you join us on the platform? Are you there? Right, okay. Welcome, and we look forward to your...
Steph, the Glasgow cabbie, and I endorse every single word that he said tonight, and I also want to thank him for the great lunch. We nearly didn't get drunk, but then we thought, well, we've a lot of work to do tonight, so we better stay sober. So I just want to tell you a little bit what I'm going to talk about. I'm just going to give you a little bit background first of all, then I'm going to let you have an idea about the different concerns we have, and then what is the agenda behind this. So first of all, my name is Katrina Taylor. I'm a retired head teacher from a Catholic primary school in Edinburgh. But for the last 6 years, I've been doing supply cover because I love my job. I am a passionate teacher, but I'm a very, very angry teacher right at this point in time. And everything was well in schools until 2019, when Education Scotland decided to have a refresh of the national curriculum in education. And part of that refresh was the health and wellbeing policy. And this was apparently to enable our children to come to grips with what was going to happen and how life would be in the 21st century. So consequently, this was published in 2019. Were you, as parents, aware that this was going to be happening? Because as a teacher, I wasn't aware that it was going to be happening. But then, of course, 2020 hit us. We had the lockdown, we had government mandates, we had schools closed, and of course, consequently, for 2 years, parents have been banned or excluded from coming into schools. That is an abomination, and as a teacher and a head teacher, I can honestly say that I've missed the parents coming in, but because you have or haven't been able to come in, of course, this has been able to slip under the net for the last 2 years. So this health and wellbeing policy, refreshed by this Dr. Morrison, with alongside LGBTQ and Stonewall, and endorsed by Education Scotland and SNP. And of course, now health and wellbeing, it sounds quite an innocuous subject. You think, well, that's okay, that's safe, it's about health and it's about wellbeing. But this policy, in my opinion, was surreptitiously slipped into schools under the radar. And because it was refreshed by LGBT and Stonewall, what they've put in and added in is RSHP, part of the policy, and that stands for Relationships, Sexual Health and Parenthood. Now, I see a lot of posters around here telling you about that. You can actually get that if you look it up online, rshp.scot, you can see all the materials, absolutely everything there. So this, in my opinion, though, is an absolutely nefarious source, and it's been quietly included into this new wellbeing document without your consultation and without the consultation of the wider community. Nobody knew that this was going to be delivered to our children. And when we're seeing it as teachers, I, for one, I am absolutely appalled and disgusted. Please be aware that this programme, it's not statutory, and schools do not have to deliver this. They can have the choice if they wish to deliver this in schools or not. Now, for example, Catholic schools that I was the head teacher of, we have our own programme, and if schools decide that they're not going to use this programme, they obviously have to put something else in its place. Well, that's a lot more work. They maybe don't want to do it, and so this programme is included into the curriculum. However, teachers, some teachers, and I know for a fact head teachers as well, feel the same as me, and there's two schools of thought on it. There's some teachers that are really on the side that they will not deliver this programme, but then other teachers on the opposite side who will deliver it and more. So there's a wide range of diversity in the delivery of this programme in school. But the teachers, a lot of them, going by their head teachers, they can decide depending on what their moral principles are. but it certainly goes against my moral principles, and I refuse to teach any part of this sex education programme in schools. Every school I go into almost, I do have a conversation with the heads, sometimes with teachers, and I have to put my cards on the table and say, I wouldn't be doing this. Whether they invite me back or not, that's entirely up to them. I know that I have been banned from one school already because I wouldn't teach it. Anyway, why should we be concerned? Why should we be concerned about this programme in schools? As a teacher and a parent, I'm concerned because, in my opinion, the materials included are definitely not age appropriate. They are sexually explicit. In my opinion, they use totally inappropriate language that at best embarrasses children and at worst traumatises them. I've had umpteen telephone calls from parents telling me that their child has come out of school totally traumatised by what they've heard in lessons. This takes away their innocence. It encourages sexual curiosity, it causes confusion, and the materials throughout, including slides and films, some of which are pornographic, normalises underage sex and promiscuity, homosexual, lesbian relationships, and it indoctrinates the children into thinking that it's normal to question whether or not they are the right gender and in the right body. And the problem is, you, as parents, have no right to know any of this is happening to your children. That's the whole criminal thing in essence about this. So, as a teacher, that's why I'm really concerned. As a parent, you are really concerned as well. And you have to think, what are your rights as a parent? So, it is your fundamental right to be the first educators of your children. You decide what you want to educate them on, how you want to educate them. It's your right to choose the type of education you want for your child. It's your right to decide when it is appropriate for your child to learn about sexual relations and within the security of knowing you and their loving family, and that the sexual relations are done in love. It is your right as a parent to know what is being taught to your children. And it is your right to remove your children from these unacceptable lessons if you so wish. As parents, you should be able to trust that your school is offering the appropriate academic curriculum for your child and not sexualising them from nursery age onwards. But were you consulted about all of this?
No.
Were you invited into the school to view all the materials prior to them being introduced?
No.
Now, when I speak to teachers and heads about this, they say, oh yeah, but we send a letter out. All the parents get a letter to say there will be sex education taking place in the next 2 weeks for these lessons. The problem is, it's a very generic letter and it doesn't actually specify explicitly what parts of this programme will be shown. And if, parents, if you're working, you're busy, you've got, a few children, you might not look up that programme and look because it's really quite a hefty programme. But if you could spend the time, it's split into levels. So there's early years, then there's level 1, there's level 2. Level 1 is from primary 1 to primary 3, then level 2 from, say, primary 3 up to primary 7, primary 4 to 7. You decide and have a look at what is being taught to your child, and you will be able to find every single slide and every single film that is there and what your wee one will get to see. So your rights, you need to watch and have a look and see. But the other thing is, are you also aware that your child, I find, is quite indoctrinated through this health and wellbeing programme? Teachers, it's one of these subjects that incorporates the whole of the curriculum. So it goes right through literacy, maths, every subject, and every teacher has a responsibility to deliver health and well-being throughout the school. Now, within that now, different resources are coming out in maths or in art or in literacy, which is including bits of gender, different types of gender, you know, what different things about maybe maths problems, and it's 2 wee boys, or it's 2 daddies, or it's 2... So it's slowly infiltrating all parts of the curriculum. So the other thing that I think is quite really quite scary actually is that the children from nursery onwards can go into school one day. So if you've got a wee girl, she can go into school, a 4-year-old, and say, I want to be a boy today. So if her name's Jane, she might want to change her name to John. Now kids change all the time. They want to be princesses, pirates, soldiers, whatever, firemen. They dress up. That's a natural part of growing up. But children are allowed now to say that they want to be a girl or they want to be a boy, they want to be called, you know, Jane wants to be called John. And the teacher has to respect this wish of the child and call the child by that name during the day and the correct pronouns. And I've heard of teachers being taken over the coals if they don't do this and they call the child the wrong pronoun. If it's a wee boy wanting to be a girl and they'll say, oh, he or whatever. And the child doesn't want that. And the teacher has to respect their wishes. But the thing is, it's not your right as a parent for you to be consulted on this or notified about your child's choices. And all of your rights, parental rights, are being eroded and slipping away on a daily basis if you're not careful. So you need to stick up for yourself and you need to stick up for your rights as parents. And you need to be concerned right now and find out exactly what is going on in your schools. However, according to the United Nations Convention for the Rights of Children, your child has 42 rights. I'm not going to read the 42 rights, you'll be quite happy to know. But included is the right to respect from all. And the government should ensure that your child's rights are upheld without discrimination of any kind. So the teachers have to respect your child's choice to choose what gender they are, without any discrimination. Children know that all adults must do what is best for the child. That's in Article 3. All adults must do what is best for that child. I cannot say in delivery of that programme that is best for that child. So are we doing that? Are we doing what's best for the child? I don't think so. A child also should be confident that no one should promote materials that could harm them. What about these insidious materials that, in my opinion, are tantamount to pornography, and they could lead to child grooming if we're not careful? And Article 19 says they should be confident that they are protected from violence, abuse, and neglect from adults. Well, I would suggest that this material is opening up adults being able to abuse and groom our children, and I would be neglectful in my position as a teacher if I did not make parents aware of the contents of this resource. And we would both be neglectful, you two as parents, if we did not voice our concerns, our disgust and our anger at what is being delivered in schools. So finally, we should be concerned for our youngsters. They are the important people here, and they're the ones that we have to safeguard and make sure that we bring them up as lovingly and as healthy and with no loss of innocence as we can manage. So what is the impact on our children? Well, first of all, as I've said, loss of innocence and childhood. We have to let our children be children. They grow up far too quickly, they're finding out far too many things far too quickly. Television's full of it, media's full of it, and they are losing their innocence very quickly. Trauma children are coming home from school traumatised and upset by what they've heard in class. They can't believe it, they're asking parents, they're crying, they're in shock. Then there's confusion for children. They're asking, what gender am I? Am I in the right body? And there's a cartoon film, you can get it online, for 7-year-olds, and it's called Love in a Heartbeat. And it's 2 little boys loving each other. And they're 2 little friends, but they fall in love, and they find out it's okay and acceptable for boys to love each other and kiss. And one wee boy went home and said to his dad, this is a true story, said to his dad, is it okay, Dad, for boys to marry each other? Well, of course the dad said yes, because in our culture it is okay for men to get married and women to get married. And I've not got an issue with that as adults, but to indoctrinate children I do. But he said, the dad said yes, it was okay. He said, oh, that's lovely, because Samuel's my best friend, and so when I grow up, we've decided we're going to get married when we grow up. Now, that can be a childish thing, but it's still put into that child's head that that's okay. Then we've got bullying. Children are being bullied on a daily basis and ostracised because of their alternative views and their opinions about this programme, and because they don't want to be watching pornography at break time in school. And this is happening now in our schools in Scotland. Children are told in school and secondary, oh, pornography is natural, it's okay, you can watch it. They're all going out with their phones in the playground, watching pornography, and some kids don't want to watch it, so they're ostracised and they're bullied. But they're all doing it because they're told that's okay, it's normal. Then there's curiosity and promiscuity. Children thinking that this is so good, nice, pleasant, and it's allowed, and it's acceptable behaviour. So wouldn't they be encouraged to try it out? I should think they are. And already, that consequence has already been seen in a primary school in Edinburgh, and I've heard another few stories even tonight. 2 boys, primary 7 boys, at a school in Edinburgh have already sexually assaulted and abused another primary school P7 pupil in the toilets after their sex education lesson. They just were being curious, they thought they would investigate and see what it was like, because the teacher told them it was lovely. So the police have been called and there's an investigation pending. But this is just the beginning. So when is all this going to stop? And where will it stop? And where will it lead to? Because I'm really worried about all of it. So finally, what is the agenda and what can we do about this? So firstly, the state wants total destruction of the family. The family brings stability and they don't want that. The family unit has been totally destroyed by constant political attacks over decades, with the aim being to ensure that children do not look to the parents for guidance, but they will look to the state. And we see the state is taking more and more control of our lives, as they have done over the last 2 years with their draconian mandates. Secondly, women and mothers are being sidelined, and I would suggest that the language of womanhood, motherhood and a mother's love is language that will eventually be demonised as a form of unacceptable sexist hate speech. And thirdly, this curriculum and the materials in it are normalising all sexual behaviours and pornography, and they have effectively reduced the age of consent to 13. At that age now, children can have sex, take contraceptives, or even have an abortion, and this can all be done without the parents' consent. It is not your right to know. You do not have to know this, and schools do not have to report this to parents. Finally, in the WHO's document, that's the World Health Organization's document, their agenda is to legalise consensual sex between adolescents. And you ask yourself, well, what is the definition of adolescence? And when you look at their definition of adolescence, it's between 10 and 19. So what does that tell us? I think it's paving the way for MAP. If you don't know what MAP is, I'll let you go and find out yourself. Another preference. And so now I put it, so what have I done? I'm trying to deliver this message to lots of parents, deliver it in school, let them know that I'm not happy. I've set up a parent support network in Edinburgh for parents to contact me if they're worried and give them advice on how to approach the school and letters to write in. And we've got our next meeting tomorrow night in Edinburgh. And so that's what we're all trying to do here, a really good job to raise awareness, tell people what's happening. But the most important people are you. And so now I put it to you, the parents and guardians of our children, what are you going to do about putting a stop to this insidious indoctrination of your children and our future generation? What will you do about it? And to any independent journalists or media or police out there, what are you going to do to help us?
Well said.
Well, thank you, Katrina. That's what we need, isn't it? We need more teachers who are willing to speak out. It's all very well to say, it's a bit difficult to speak out, I'm a bit worried what will happen to my career. What comes first, protecting the children or your own career? I think we're in the situation that all teachers have to put protecting children first. Just to add something very quickly, in terms of withdrawing children from it, it's nice in theory, but if you withdraw your child, what the school will probably do is then say to the child, would you like to overrule your parents? And if the child said, yeah, I think I would, I'd like to stay with my pals and go to sex education, that's what happens. We hear that story time and time again. Right, our next speaker is Dr. Stuart Waiter, who is a sociology lecturer at Abertay University. He is Scotland's answer to Jordan Peterson, if you know Jordan Peterson. So you will enjoy listening to Stuart. Over to Stuart.
I think it should be fine. That's okay, isn't it? That's all right. Yeah, it's fine. I don't know where to start, really. It's an interesting one. Just to give you a sense of myself, I'm not a religious person. I'm not a conservative person. I'm quite liberal about sex. I've been lefty, who's campaigned for gay rights and against racism. And I'm utterly appalled about what is happening in schools at the minute, as you all are. And I'm going to go beyond, because I'm interested in trying to set up some kind of union or association, something like what was set up 100 years ago for people to fight back against things. And I'm hoping to organise a conference in November, which I hope you all come to try and look at these various issues, because it's not just for me, it's not just about the sex issue, it's other issues as well, where we find that what we have essentially in schools today is not education but indoctrination, and that's a real concern I have. So as you know, concerns have been raised in the UK, in Wales, in England and in Scotland about sex surveys and sex education. Surveys, as have been mentioned, have raised issues to do with 14-year-olds, asking them intimate details about their sex lives, something that even the Scottish Children's Commissioner has raised concern about. There's also concern about primary-age children being taught with the help of graphic images how to have sex. Some are worried about the promotion of pornography in secondary school, has been raised just there. And as I say, you don't have to be a conservative and you don't have to be a Christian to look at some of the material that is being taught to children and to think that education authorities have lost the plot. The word I would use is unhinged. Yes. What is happening in school is unhinged. The education authorities' promotion of transgender ideology, for example, is unhinged. Adults can do what they like to their bodies, that's up to them, but children being encouraged to think about their gender obsessively at a very young age is unhelpful and incredibly disorienting.
Well said.
In the Scottish Government's document supporting transgender children in schools, we're informed that if a child wants to change their gender, that is not a well-being issue. But if a parent raises concerns about this, that is a well-being issue. And so the current policy is to hide this from parents. This is an incredibly important part of a child's life. And as far as the government is concerned, these educators are concerned, this should be hidden from you, the parents and the grandparents. Through this new ideology, parents are represented as a danger to their own children. Schools are also, and this is another concern I have, they're also obsessed with racism. Indeed, the Scottish Government has said that it wants to embed race equality in every school and in every school subject. They even want maths to be anti-racist. And I'm not joking, that's serious. And this is happening in universities as well. I'm against racism, as I'm sure everyone else here is, but this obsession with racism is not helpful. Nor is the idea, if you've heard of this, of white privilege. In case you didn't know, you all have white privilege. Your children have white privilege, and this is being taught in schools. Some parents may agree with this idea, many, myself included, do not. But this is not education. This is a dogma. This is not a discussion about race and understanding racism. This is a dogma where you are taught that you have and your children have white privilege. This doesn't help black kids, doesn't help white kids. It seems just incredibly divisive and a different type of racism as far as I can see. Teachers are no longer, or teaching rather, is no longer about the passion for the subject, which it should be, and the ability to pass on the knowledge to the next generation. Rather, it is about ensuring politically and emotionally correct values are engineered through our schools. As one commentator noted, when it comes to the politicisation of the curriculum, Scotland stands at the forefront of turning education into a form of mass social engineering. Many so-called right-thinking educators believe that children should be liberated. But liberated from what? The answer, I think, is liberated from you, from their parents, from their grandparents and the communities that they come from. From the perspective of our enlightened elites, you and your so-called traditional values are seen as the problem. We are seen as bigots. And they are going to correct this and give our children their correct values. Make no mistake, what is happening in schools is a form of indoctrination. A senior educator concerned about what's happening in schools believes that it is almost impossible to become a teacher today unless you adopt the correct way of thinking. Getting a promotion and becoming a head teacher is becoming, again, almost impossible unless you take the knee to this new ideology. That is really, really worrying and dangerous. And make no mistake, this is an ideology. When parents raise concerns, they are made to feel like bigots. For what? For thinking that schools should be about education? For having a common sense understanding of what schools should be about? For thinking that perhaps, just perhaps, small children should not be taught all the intricate details of having sex? For daring to think that it's not helpful to teach children who happen to have white skin that they have a problem of whiteness. For thinking that promoting the idea of transgenderism to young children is not that helpful, or at the very least, believing that you, the parent, should be informed if your child says they want to change their gender. And the fact, as we've heard just there, the fact that this is hidden from parents is an absolute disgrace. What we need are new institutions and organisations, and I hope out of this something can develop like that. As I said, well over 100 years ago, ordinary people felt the need to defend themselves. They set up unions, they set up societies and collective bodies to protect themselves and promote their beliefs. That's what we need today. Yeah. After all, whose children are they Are they your children, your grandchildren, or do they belong to the state? School should be a place of learning. It should be about knowledge. Believe it or not, it should be about maths, English, geography, history, and the sciences. School should be about education, not indoctrination. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. Absolutely brilliant, spot on. We're focusing on one issue, but we could go on all day about things with education in Scotland. Fantastic. Right, our next speaker is Pastor Arthur O'Malley, who is a church leader of Eastgate Church in Elderslie. And Arthur is very passionate about these issues, and I would say he's a prophetic voice in Scotland. So Arthur, come and speak to us.
Well, thank you, and I've been so blessed to listen to the passion of the speakers, and thank God for Scottish cabbies and academics, and it shows us from the top to the bottom that we are all here and we're all concerned. We've got a common fight, and that fight is for the children. They say any mark of a nation, especially a Christian nation, is a nation how it looks after its elderly and its children. That is the mark of any nation. And unfortunately, we have now lost the plot where we are now not defending our elderly or our young children. So it's so refreshing to be here tonight. And I'm here to just bring a little bit from the Bible. From you go back to the beginning, it was God who established the family. It wasn't some philosophy of some Greek or Roman empire. It was actually the Lord that put them in place. A husband, a wife, for the procreation of children and for the upbringing of the children. It was the domain of the parents to be able to teach their children, educate them with good values, I might add. Just some scriptures here. It says, Proverbs 22:6 says, train up a child in the way he should go, and he will not depart from it when he is old. They say the number 7 is very strategic. I think the Nazi ideology was very conscious of that, and it says they took control of the children and they sowed that ideology in them, and we know it was very wicked and corrupt. I think it was Aristotle that says, give me that child for the age of 7 and I will show you the man. So it goes way back to there. So we forget how influenced the children are. They're like little sponges. I remember having a fight with my children when they used to come back from school. That's when schools were safe places. You felt comfortable putting your child into school. Now, like many of you, I know many parents now who are taking their children out of school because they don't feel like they are safe. And I remember my child says, my teacher said so. And I went, I'm your father and I'm saying, and by goodness, I had a fight in my hands. No, my teacher. And but that is true, isn't it? You know, it's the power of the teaching when the children are young. They're very open. And what we're seeing just now is an absolute abomination. And you're right, we are seeing the government seem to be pulling the rug from under our feet. And they're saying, we are going to educate your children. Basically, it's attacking our Judean Christian heritage. And now, maybe a lot of you are not very godly, or you've lost the idea of God. But these were foundations that we had as a nation that governed us. I always say this, you knew what side of the road you were walking down the right side or the left side. Now the lines are blurred and we don't know what side we're coming or we're going, because we're seeing all this terrible sex education. Kids are being confused, kids are being groomed, if you like, and being taught things that should never be taught. I agree with our last speaker there. It's the parents' right to teach our children about sex. It's not the school. And I would say that to the police as well. It's not the school's job to teach children about sex. It was the parents' job. I mean, I think I was 5 and I still believed it was the storks that brought the babies. But listen, we all know about the birds and bees, and we all naturally grow up and we all gradually will find out about sex when we become to an appropriate age. But as I said, the Bible is very conscious of this. In Deuteronomy 4:9 it says, be careful and watch yourselves closely. Do not forget the things that your eyes have seen and what your face and your heart, as long as you live. Teach them to your children and to their children's children. And another verse in 6 and 7 says, impress them on your children. Talk to them when they're at home and when you walk along the road. Lay it deep within their hearts. And so we as parents, unfortunately as parents, we probably failed. Our children now are vulnerable now to the IT world, and they've got a hold of a phone, they've got a hold of everything, and their whole world is being corrupted and we need to do something about that. But unfortunately, try and take a phone off your child and World War III has just begun. And so we are struggling today. But this stuff should never be actually taught. We as parents have got our rights. And I thank you that we are taking a stand here tonight. It says evil triumphs when good people do nothing. And thank God that we are standing up for what is right. And all of us have got a common denominator. We need to defend our children. I said to a man once who was agreeing with all of this narrative that's been taught today, and he says, well, children have to find their own way. And I just said, well, what if you were walking down the road and somebody came up and started to beat up your child? Would you just stand back and allow it to take place? It goes, of course not. It says, of course I would do something about it. Our children are being psychologically abused and we are standing back and allowing it to take place. I mean, it's a Scottish spirit. We are warriors. I've said this before. The Scots are not called Bravehearts for not good reason. I was appalled with Mary Black, and it was in a school in Paisley, a primary school, when they brought a drag queen in to teach the children. We have outlawed the biblical Our Father's Prayer, and we don't want Bible being taught, but she was sitting there with a drag queen teaching our children. Now, what's the message to these young children? Oh, that looks nice. It's just a drag queen. Please, come on. There's no danger in that. But the mind of the child saying, well, it must be okay to dress up like a woman or to dress like this. And we're sowing all these wrong ideas. And of course, Mary Black, SMP, defended it to the hilt. And then it came out that this man, Flo Job, had actually a very pornographic background and had a stage act at night and all of the rest of it. These were the people that were bringing in. And I thought, Fergusley Park, I was brought up in Fergusley Park. Couldn't believe it that Fergusley Park would have allowed this. Well, there was an uproar. But we need to have an uproar. There's so much happened now that we have just let slip. I want to tell you this, the Scottish people will stand up now. When we are children, we can take it in the chin. Like you've got such a love for your child. When my child is sick, you want to take the sickness from them, don't you? You want to just say, if only I could take the pain of your child had a serious disease. Or if anybody touched your child, well, you would die to defend them. And yet what are we doing? We're just allowing all of this now just to come against them. The battle is for our children. They want to create a new normal. And this is this language that we don't understand. And it's been rolling out and we've been allowed ourselves to just let our morals be corroded and taken from us. It's time we stood up. Our government was there to serve the people, not to control us or indoctrinate us and turn our children into little divas that they are deliberately grooming. And it is a grooming. They're determined to break down the walls that we've had, the structures that we've had in place for many years as a so-called Christian nation. Unfortunately, we've rebelled against the order of God, and this is the order now the way we've got. We had an order before, a walls of protection. Now they want to take that away from the toilets, and they want to have open plan toilets now, so it's unisex. I mean, who heard of anything so crazy? What was wrong with male and female? What was wrong with, who was complaining about male and female toilets? And just as we heard there, a man now can identify himself as a female. So Desperate Dan with a handbag, skirt and boots can walk into a ladies' toilet. Now, gentlemen, can I ask you a question today? I remember being a father and I'm now a grandfather, believe it or not. Could you imagine, you've got your wee girl, you're out 7 years old, you take her down, you're standing outside the ladies' toilet, your wee girl's in there doing the business. And you watch Desperate Dan with a big skirt and his boots on, matching handbag, ready to walk into the toilets. I would say, excuse me, sir, but my daughter's in there and you're not getting in. And he would say, I've got every right to get in. I would say, over my dead body, you're not getting in. And I think many of us men, and I'm sure policemen as well, would not be letting that take place. That some Butch Cassidy would be walking in while your young children were in the privacy of a toilet. What madness are we going through today? Listen, nothing is happening by chance. The government just seems, well, we're just evolving. No, nothing is evolving. There is an agenda, and they are driving an agenda, and they are moving towards, which is a world agenda. I Our answer belongs, we need to return back to our roots, and we need to return back to God. Hence the reason I've got this little Bible in my hand. God is very passionate about families. God cares for families. God cares for children.
Amen.
Even many times Jesus would have a child to stand beside him and says, I tell you the truth, unless you become like this child, you're in danger of not even getting into the kingdom of God. Why? Because children are just so innocent. They're just so pure. You can tell them anything and they would believe it. Your child just stands next to his father and there's maybe a big giant in front of you, and the wee child will say, my dad will sort you out, and you're like, quiet son, quiet. I'm not David. But children have just got so much faith in us, and they'll just tell them anything and they can believe it. I remember one night we were walking up the road with my children. They were very young, and it was a starry night, and I was telling them about the glory of God, and there was a half a moon up in the sky, and I went, oh look guys, there's only half a moon. I says, what do you think the other half is? Well, I don't know, Dad. You get a kick out of these little things because they're, Listen, children are very vulnerable. And as parents and as God-given people, or just decent people, we've got a duty to protect our children. Our children are being maliciously taught filth that should never be taught. It's not the school's job or the government's job. It's the parents' job to raise our children with good values, with good morals that we can induct into them and we can raise up the next generation. Yeah. This government are determined to change the way our children are thinking. They are attacking our parents' rights. They have got not the right to teach our children. We should teach them good morals, and so that we're raising up a good generation that's going to be standing in the future for us. We need to take a stand, and I am privileged as a pastor to stand with my fellow Scotsmen and women on a common battle. This is for our children, and we need to stand firm, stand fast, and defend our children against an agenda that's out to destroy their young minds. God bless you all, and thank you again for being here.
Sometimes when I listen to Arthur, the thought just crosses their mind that maybe he actually believes what he's saying. Could anyone be much more passionate than that? Fantastic, thank you, Arthur. Now we're almost there. It's not going to be too long now. Next up is me. I haven't got very much to share. And the other of these events I've shared in a bit more detail, but I've got a few things. If you've got a teddy, can you give it a wave in the air? Let's see those teddies. Now, when we think of childhood, that's what we think, don't we? Playing with a teddy. This lot here, Education in Scotland, they think more of children playing with their gender identity. Experimenting with different pronouns. What a totally different vision. It's as though they've completely forgotten what children really are. It's as though they've never had children, which is the case for a lot of the people who are pushing this sort of agenda. The way they cut parents out of, for example, children changing gender, that's been raised a couple of times already. For me, that is such a grave issue. If I was in the SNP, if I was in any party that wasn't completely opposed to that, I would resign immediately. If I was a teacher, I would utterly refuse to do that. We just cannot allow that to happen. We've heard already about how primary school children are basically taught how to have sex. Now I'm going to show you a couple of placards here. There was a young girl there earlier on, but she seems to have gone now, so I'm okay to show these because there are no children here. But so a couple of visual aids here. I got these placards made ages ago. I was standing in an election against Ian Blackford, and I thought, I'm going to get him. I'm going to get in a hustings with him, and when it comes to my term, I'm going to hold these up and say, right, Mr. Blackford, this is what your party's promoting. What have you got to say to that? But guess what happened? He wouldn't come to the hustings. He refused to come. Right, here we go. What do you make of those images? Utterly disgusting. I don't even want to hold it there to show you. Utterly disgusting. Now this one here, you won't be able to see it again. I hate talking about these things, but to me this is one of the most obscene, vulgar, outrageous things in the sex education resources. It's talking about oral sex, different types of oral sex. No comment on them. This is the menu, boys and girls. You just take your pick. If any of these takes your fancy, you give it a try. Licking the anus. There. That's in a lesson plan in a Scottish school. The last one here, these two ones have now been removed from the curriculum. The famous banana and Nutella. Again, just utterly obscene and disgusting. This picture here, this like chicken tied up with string, that's supposed to be illustrating bondage, making a bit of a joke about it. And the message to the boys and girls is basically, this is something that lots of people do, so hey, maybe it's something you'll want to give a try as well. Now, I was just going to say I don't know about you, but I think I do know about you. But I look at that and I think that is just beyond the pale. I cannot imagine how anyone sits there and thinks, yep, that's what needs teaching in schools. But it's not just one individual. It's the whole of Education Scotland. It's the whole of the General Teaching Council of Scotland. It's the whole of the Scottish Government. It's a huge portion of the teaching profession and head teachers in Scotland, sadly, that are quite happy with that. But our mission here is to protect children. And it needs doing, they need protecting. It's so sad to have to say this, isn't it? Children need protecting from their schools. Children need protecting, in many cases, from their teachers. They need protecting from this bunch here in Education Scotland. They need protecting from the Scottish Government. They need protecting from the whole Parliament, because this is not opposed in the Parliament. A lot of it comes from the United Nations and the World Health Organization. They need protecting from them. Okay, so a lot of it comes from Holyrood, but also they just get the same messages from Hollywood as well and through the media. Now the media, of course, have just got a total blackout on this, with honourable exceptions. We've got David here from UK Columns. Great to see you here. Anyone who will help communicate this message, we think is doing a vital service to the children of Scotland. Now we're really in a David and Goliath struggle here, aren't we? I mean, there's a say, but are we going to give up? No, we don't care what the odds are. This battle needs to be fought, because we're not happy to have our children confused, corrupted, indoctrinated. That is not an option. So we need to take the battle to these mighty institutions. We've got one thing on our side, well, more than one thing. We've got the truth. We've got what's right on our side. We are on the right side of this issue. I've never been more convinced about anything in my life. If someone came out from Education Scotland and said, well, let me explain to you why those images are actually fine. No way. They're not going to persuade me. They're wrong. We're right. It's as simple as that. Now, just before I finish, I'll put my Scottish Family Party hat on briefly. Now, we've got to stand up against this in any way we possibly can. Any way. Now, one of the ways we do that, obviously, is through politics. You know, if you don't like what the government's doing, what do we need to do? We need to not vote for them. If you don't like what one party is doing, you need to vote for a different one. So if you want to help us to stand against this through politics, join the Scottish Family Party, be a candidate in the next election, maybe. Because we're going to fight this at the political level. Ultimately, we want MSPs in the Scottish Parliament. What I'm saying here, I want to be saying it in the debating chamber of the Scottish Parliament. But that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen without an absolute army of supporters of the Scottish Family Party that can put people like me in there to say things like we've been hearing tonight. Wouldn't that be amazing? What would Nicola Sturgeon have to say if she was put on the spot? What a sight it would be. Our mission is to make it happen. Right, tonight we've got lots and lots of leaflets about sex education and transgenderism as well. Take as many as you like, take a handful, give them to all the people. You know, you're very welcome to take as many as you can. Steps Billboard campaign. That's amazing how much money has been raised by that. We're over £7,000, aren't we? I would guess some of you have dug into your pockets and supported that. Again, that's really going to make a difference. It's going to push this issue up the agenda. I can't wait to see those on the billboards. I can't wait for the reactions. So that is fantastic. After the summer as well, we're going to have a rally. Stefan is crowdfunder, so you know, we'll have an event. So we're looking at having a rally so we can gather indoors to hear a bit more about it. You can bring people along to just keep pushing this issue forward. So thank you so much for coming. That's been absolutely brilliant. We've got two more speakers. I think will be fairly brief. And afterwards, don't rush off. Let's get the best possible photograph with all of your faces and all these teddy bears over here, and we'll get the best possible picture to see if we can get that into the media. So don't shoot off. And I'm now going to hand over to Andrew Owen. I've seen Andrew's face over there. Andrew is the leader of Destiny Church here in Glasgow. These issues are very close to his heart, and he's just going to say a few words, and then Steph is just going to conclude for us. Andrew.
Thank you everybody for coming out tonight. I once heard a university lecturer say, he who controls the story controls the world. Holyrood has learnt from Hollywood and is now indoctrinating our kids. I pastor a large church here in Glasgow with hundreds of families. I've never heard so many parents say they want to take their kids out of the school. We are a father and mother, grandparents, deeply concerned about what's happening in our city, in our time. And we are standing here saying, not on our watch. Things have got to change. This is a day when they want to silence our voice, make us think we have nothing to contribute, to make us consider that our place has no validity. But they're our kids, not their kids. And so many of them have no kids, yet they want to control our kids. They want to decide their future. But you know what? We have a cause, just like Richard was saying, that is right, that is just, and this is a moment for us to stand like never before. If the story controls the word, let's get the right story out. Let's get the story that our kids matter. They are our future, they are our today. This is a moment when no matter how small or insignificant we think we are, every one of us together can make a difference.
I brought a teddy tonight. I'm Andrew's wife. We pastor Destiny Church. We represent hundreds of families in Scotland. And I don't know if you felt an ache in your heart like I have, but my heart's been breaking about this for the children. And I brought a teddy tonight just as a thing to look at. He's got wellies on. Don't our children like to wander? Don't they like to go and explore? And I put my teddy some wellies on because I know what kids are like. We've 5 sons, we've 7 grandchildren. And children like to wander. But maybe we should wander with them to see where they're going, to see who they're with. And haven't they been set up just before the summer holiday? It's bad enough. Now they've got all that going on in their thinking. I also brought a trowel. I see our children as wanderers, but I also see their lives as like a garden. And we should be watching out for what's growing in their lives because seeds have been sown. And we can watch out for what's coming up, the way they speak, the way they walk. I feel for families already struggling with a member who is torn apart by pornography. The child is now set up to come and help that happen. The child is now set up to set the brothers and the sisters up into a criminal act, all sorts of things. And you know what? I'm a nurse by profession from many years ago. I know medicines count and they make a difference. For the very few that need them, we really need compassion. I think that's what that ache in the belly is compassion. And medicines are needed, but I sense the chaos that's happening now in our society is about control and medicine. And it's taken the children on a journey. And I don't know if anybody's ever thought this, but I'm conscious too of the assisted suicide bill. Because should your child do something, then grow a conscience, then feel depressed, then need antidepressants, their education lasts maybe 13 to 15 years. You won't know what's going on from a very early age, but the doctor will, the school will, the social work will, and your child could be on a trajectory of medicines taking them where? I just wonder, my heart breaks. I brought this little hat. I can't juggle too much, but I'll try not to drop everything. We need to watch their thinking. How do we know what they're thinking? It's because of what they say. It's because of when they go quiet. Why have they gone quiet? We need to watch their thinking and cover them. You know, when you look at I think they call it the Adult Mental Capacity Assessment. It was something that I saw was written in 2005. For a vulnerable adult, they would check that they could understand the information coming with a view to making a decision. This is for an adult now. The Adult Mental Capacity Assessment. They would be given information and they'd be checked on how much they understood. Then they would be looked at with regards to what they can retain. Can they use that information? And then later on it's can they make a decision. If that's the check for an adult, what are we doing to the children? We know for sure they can't make good decisions. We know for sure they change their mind. We know for sure they influence each other. I am a grandparent, and I'm mindful too that parents have become the baddie in some families' situation because the teacher says, trust me, not your mum and dad. Maybe it's the day now where the nannies and the granddads step in, take the children for a walk, do a little bit of gardening with them, and make sure they've got a lovely, comfortable hat on, and take some time to befriend our children and our grandchildren. Thank you.
Invite the main man back to conclude things. Then remember, we'll have a brilliant photograph after then. So, Steph.
Okay, guys. I've just got to thank every fantastic speaker that's come up here tonight. It really is a pleasure to have you. So many very, very well-educated people. An extra special thanks, of course, to our retired head teacher, Katrina Taylor. It's wonderful having you all, whether you be a teacher or whether you work in your local butchers or bakers, whether you're a cop over there, or whether you're a politician or whoever you may be. I want you to hold the same values as the people here, the people who care deeply and passionately about the children of Scotland, because we all certainly do. In recent times, in fact, and over the last couple of days, those who follow my Facebook page, my Glasgow Cabbie page, may well have noticed that in the region of 15 to 20 posts have simply vanished, disappeared from my Facebook page. Posts on this campaign and this demonstration. That is an assault on free speech. Who is responsible? No one, not Facebook, nobody from the SNP, Nicola Sturgeon, John Swinney, or any of the rest of them have bothered to contact me to give me any explanation as to why my Facebook posts have been vanishing. But I suspect I know who it is. I can't go accusing or pointing fingers. But I know who these people are. And I know they're all for a corrupt and vile system that's indoctrinating the children of Scotland, our babies, to their vile, sick and sexual exploitation. You guys, all of you, and I mean all of you, for the back sitting down there, the garden away there, to the people at the back there, and that lovely lady holding a wee banner up there, to the people at the back there I can't really see, and the ones that I've not met, had the chance to thank, I'm thanking you all here now. I really am choked that you've made the effort to come out for the children of Scotland, and the people who have made banners, who have stood here, made their way in from Edinburgh, East Kilbride, Tollcross, and Easterhouse, where I'm fae. North Ayrshire as well. We've got people fae in India. Where are you fae, darling? East Ayrshire, right? Fife, I've got Fifers as well. All over Scotland. You people have came here to support the children of Scotland, who we view as the most important people of Scotland. Most of us have lived the best part of our lives. Most of us have been round the block and experienced life. Our tiny children haven't. And they have drilled into their wee minds some of the filth that's going on is absolutely sickening and diabolical. I'm going to ask you, Richard had just said there, before you all leave, I'm going to try and capture a picture with all of us. God knows how he's going to do that. It'll be better than a wide lens camera you'll need, and that's for me alone. But again, I can only say this. The passion of these people, these guys, even that beautiful lady just stood here last, it's really incredible. I really am proud, humbled, and I really don't know what to say other than a huge thank you. Thank you. Thanks. Now, Richard's going to try some magic trick here to get us onto a picture, but please come and join us. Let's gather together outside this building, because these are the people that are making the decisions that are absolutely sickening for our children. And I want them to see in tomorrow's press and tomorrow's Facebook pages that we've been outside their building. We don't care for them because they don't care for our children. Thanks, guys.